Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. First graphic, fire danger and reduced down from yesterday here in the northwest along the western Arctic coast. A couple of small areas up here, looks like from roughly Kivalina into the Noatak Valley and that general area. Pretty low, just barely reaching that high fire danger level. And then a area still persisting here in the upper Yukon Valley there along the Porcupine and upper Yukon convergence area there. And they had about 1/10 of an inch of rain fell in this area today with lighter amounts around that area. So it's really beginning to fade away and may not even carry that tomorrow. So moving on to satellite imagery, you can see the clouds shifting up to the northeast part of the state there, but falling just short of Arctic Village, at least at the 2 p.m. Frame here. But a lot of clouds west and southwest all the way down into northern Bristol Bay. Quite an area of light rain here with this feature, tapering off there over the Yukon Delta and the Kuskokwim Bay area with amounts ranging from up to or 1/10 to about 1/4 of an inch. Elam picking up roughly 1/4 of an inch of rain during the day today. Russian Mission had 1/3 of an inch. And over here, even heavier amounts occurring over the Tanana Valley in and around the Fairbanks area, where 4/10 of an inch fell at Fairbanks, or 4/10 to 1/2 an inch in the 12-hour period today at Fairbanks and Livingood. And to the north of there, much lighter amounts, just a few hundredths of an inch up through this area, and then that 1/10 of an inch in the upper Yukon Valley. And moisture spreading southeastward into the North Gulf Coast. That brought about 1/4 of an inch of rain to Sitka today, with this batch moving through, lighter amounts down to the south. And South Douglas near Juneau, they had about 4/10 of an inch of precipitation there. It's kind of a cloudy, damp day down there. Clearing developing here over the Cook Inlet Kenai Peninsula, some breaking out and pushing up into the Anchorage area, trying to get into the Susitna Valley. More clouds, a little bit of a break there for Kodiak, but moisture streaming northeastward with that good southwest flow. Already rainfall about to make landfall there on the southwest side of Kodiak Island. If it hasn't already, it will in the next few hours. And some more moisture pushing into the Pribilofs, and a band of rain here across central Aleutians on into the Alaska Peninsula, and most of that still to the south. On the chart, there's a warm front associated with that moisture that's flowing northeastward here with the upper level wind flow and the main 997 millibar low back over the central Aleutians. Rain and fog all through this area. Wind's not that big of a problem, maybe 15, 25 miles an hour. Could see some gusts a little bit higher than that through the channeled areas of the islands here. But much lighter for the Alaska Peninsula. Rain, fog, and drizzle, again, that pushing along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula here, Sandpoint eastward, and about to reach the Kodiak Island area. And then the area of clearing here over south central Alaska due to some westerly flow coming down off the Alaska Range, a little bit downsloping. Still some scattered showers up in the valley, mostly over the mountainous terrain. And then the rain here through the central interior, all along this trough extending down into the southeast coast, all the way back up to the northwest there. Another trough with that area of precipitation over the southwest that's tapering off now and turning to showers over the Alaska Peninsula, actually ending over the Yukon Delta. And some scattered showers out over the Shimmy and Attu area. A little bit of flurry condition up around Point Barrow today. Otherwise, the Arctic coast, areas of fog off to the east, basically dry, same thing for the North Slope. And for tonight, it'll stay showery here, definitely cloudy for the southeast coast, and showers scattered across Copper River Basin on up into the 40-mile country upper Tanana Valley. The more steadier rain starting to become more intermittent and more showery along this trough back to the Seward Peninsula. And the next system rain into Kodiak Island and across Bristol Bay, up across Dillingham, King Salmon. Probably not reaching Kamishak Bay till tomorrow morning, but definitely pushing up toward Bethel and the southern Kuskokwim Delta tonight. Otherwise, a break right through here. And then the cold front keeping it wet over the Alaska Peninsula. Main low center there north of the central Aleutians yet, 993 millibars. Now keep definitely unsettled there. West winds 15 to 25 with showers, light rain, and fog. And then for tomorrow, that front up to the southwest coast in the afternoon. Moderate amounts of rain falling from Bristol Bay, again King Salmon, back across the coast to Nunivak Island. Slowly spreading up across the, or into the southern Yukon Delta, maybe a few breaks to start the day with, and then dry for the most part south central Alaska, but some showers start showing up and precipitation will be on the increase for the southern Kenai Peninsula and even southern Cook Inlet, especially the latter part of the afternoon into evening. May see some sun breaks early in the day, but definitely mid and high level clouds will be spreading northeastward, but generally dry. Not a bad day tomorrow for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and into the Copper River Basin. This trough much weaker, laying down a lot less precipitation, but still good for mostly cloudy skies from the upper Tanana Valley. Along that trough axis to the low center with a few scattered showers. Sun breaks up north of that, Brooks Range North Slope. No change for the Arctic coast, and some rain. Again, another batch sliding into the central and southern coast of the Panhandle with a lot less in the way of shower activity for the inland areas. And that moves through and out of the area quite rapidly there for the Sunday, or overnight Saturday night and Sunday. So it looks like not a bad day shaping up with some ridging, temporary ridging here ahead of this front, which probably won't reach the Panhandle until Sunday night, and the southern areas maybe early Monday, but this front will definitely be pushing rain across Copper River Basin tomorrow night and early on Sunday with conditions changing to showers in the afternoon. Showery across southern Alaska, a band of pretty good rainfall here from the Seward Peninsula, from Kotzebue Sound down to Norton Sound, eastward all the way across the Tanana Valley, southern upper Yukon, Koyukuk areas. Good shot of rain with this. Another trough right through here. That'll kick the winds up. Could see gusts 25, 35 miles an hour as that swings in with moderate showers, heavier amounts of rain with that trough. They'll begin to taper off late in the afternoon out along the coast and during the evening. High pressure ridging along the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. So westerly flow here making for a pretty nice day on Sunday, at least especially in the afternoon here for Kodiak Island. Could become mostly sunny through these areas right on up into Kamishak Bay, or Kachemak Bay. No, Kamishak Bay. Won't be too bad in Kamishak Bay or Kachemak Bay either there for Homer Seldovia, but definitely more sunshine in store for these areas. A little breezy on the west winds, but light winds for the Aleutians, maybe some partial clearing. Most of the shower activity will be up to the north and back to the northwest. And for low temperatures tonight, mid-30s, lower to mid-30s, which is not much change from where they're sitting right now along the central and eastern Arctic coast. 30s all the way into the Brooks Range, 40s south of the Brooks Range, all the way to the southwest coast here, and upper 40s, lower 50s for southern Alaska. The Panhandle, lower 50s. Highs for tomorrow afternoon, 60, 65, southern southeast coast, upper 50s, lower 60s to the north, lower to mid 60s for the Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, up into the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, and mid 60s here along the Alaska Peninsula, and maybe reaching 60, trying to push 60 there in the upper Yukon Valley with the Tanana Valley in the upper 50s, and near 40 for the Arctic coast. Low temperature Sunday morning, not much different up north there with low to mid 30s for the central eastern Arctic coast, as well as the North Slope. Upper 30s in the Brooks Range, lower 40s, lower to mid here for the central interior areas. Eagle maybe down to 38, and lower 40s into the Copper River Basin, lower 50s south central Alaska, lower to mid 50s. Pretty mild here for the Alaska Peninsula by comparison, and upper 40s to near 50 for the Panhandle, upper 40s out in the Aleutians. Afternoon highs shaping up like this, maybe a little bit warmer by a couple of degrees up here in the northeast, lower 60s, and looks like maybe a little cooler for the Susitna Valley. Still could push 60, 61 in some areas. Big Delta, Big Lake, for example. Northeast Bristol Bay, lower 50s to maybe 64 or 5 for Port Hayden.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at flying weather here. First graphic for Saturday morning showing IFR from the central Aleutians here up across the Permalofts, back in across the southeast Bering, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, right across Kodiak Island. And some VFR up here for Cook Inlet, the Kenai Peninsula into south central. We've got marginal VFR along the central, or most of the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley out to the Yukon Delta coast, IFR eastern Arctic coast, and some marginal VFR for the Panhandle over toward the border. And for the afternoon, a lot of IFR here shifts in toward into the coastline, across Prince of Wales Island down south. Otherwise, marginal VFR and still some IFR over toward the border. Area of VFR tomorrow for the interior from Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, most of the Copper River Basin sit in the valley into the interior, and IFR lingering along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. IFR out here for the southwest coast, still over the Permalofts down in the central Aleutians, also for Kodiak Island and Kamishak Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. And then for Sunday morning, next system here, band IFR across the Alaska Peninsula again up into Kodiak Bay and the southwest and Kuskokwim Mountain areas along the coast. IFR, Yukon Delta coast up to St. Lawrence Island, back to the Permalofts again, and a band of IFR here from the Alaska Range, mostly on those eastern slopes, across Cook Inlet, the Kenai Peninsula, and back into the VFR for Prince William Sound. Just about all the eastern interior up to the Brooks Range, back across the North Slope, western Arctic coast, VFR. Sunday afternoon, IFR on the increase again here, up over the Arctic coast and North Slope, mostly central and east side, VFR for the Brooks Range. Big area IFR here from the Koyukuk Valley all the way out across Seward Peninsula, Selawik Valley, and southward across the deltas to Togiak Bay, and along the western central Alaska Range, IFR again, Kenai Peninsula, eastern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound into the Gulf, marginal for the Panhandle. Passes shaping up like this. Tomorrow, Anatuvik and Adigan, marginal VFR becoming VFR by late morning or early afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR tomorrow in the forecast. Rainy though, look forward to improved VFR. Slowly starting out marginal. Windy, same trend, marginal VFR becoming VFR. Same trend for Isabel as well, improving after lower conditions in the morning. Ventasta becoming VFR. And for Tenita, looks like it'll be all VFR for the day Saturday, and Portage as well with westerly flow and drier air. VFR for that pass. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR to start, gradually becoming IFR later in the afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 to 4,000 feet up along the Arctic coast, 6,000 feet more or less through the interior, then more of a gradient here from the Barren Islands down across Kodiak into the Bering Sea here, roughly 6,000 to 8,000 feet, 12,000 just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Eastward across the Gulf, 8,000 to 10,000 over the Panhandle. Icing areas above 11,000 feet here, roughly. Some of that could be of the considerable moderate variety, but mostly isolated moderate. Narrow band here through the interior of possible isolated moderate rime icing. Really not all that significant, but that would be above about 5,000 feet. And then moisture coming in from the southwest here in that strong jet. Isolated areas of considerable moderate icing, otherwise just isolated through those zones. Above 11,000 feet though for the Alaska Peninsula, 7,000 feet for the southwest. And here's the jet stream, upper level low with the next storm coming into the Bering Sea. Strong southwest jet, 130 knots there from the eastern Aleutians, right in and across southern Alaska, dropping down along the Panhandle there with a cooler trough up to the north. 9,000 feet, there's low pressure here at this level. And again, aloft there, 30, 40 knot winds around that center, all the way up to the Togiak Bay area. And 20 knots for Kodiak, lighter over the interior, 10 to 15, mostly westerly. And then some stronger winds edging their way in toward the Panhandle, 3,000 feet. That's only at about 15 to 20 at this elevation. Higher pressure, lighter winds in along the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, actually extending into the interior, and the storminess out here to the west. Winds up to 45 knots coming in across eastern Aleutians, and otherwise westerlies at 30, turn northwest 15 to 20. And then for the turbulence, occasional moderate chop here for the Alaska Range with light to isolated moderate chop back to AKwx. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
We love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt.
Sure.
So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going off.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. it's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is a fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. This is the position of the sea ice from the analysis done today, Friday, and not a lot changed from what we had yesterday. Still in close here on the eastern Wilford Sea coastline, and this heavier area a little bit back to the north there, and still sea ice-free zone. The sea ice-free zone still looks like it's coming a little bit farther to the east possibly, but really not a lot changed. And over the next 5-6 days, with some varying wind directions coming up from east to south to west, looking for a net ice movement of less than 10 nautical miles. Onto the coastal water forecast here for the Panhandle. Westerlies 10 to 15 on the south coast, west 10 on the north side, seas 6 to 8 feet, south 20, Lynn Canal 15 knots from the south for Stevens Passage, and light southerlies for Clarence Strait. Outlook for Sunday, no change for Lynn Canal, still out of the south at 20. Pick up in the breeze here along the coast, westerlies at 20 knots. Seas coming up to 10 feet, it's a small craft advisories. South 20 knots on the north coast, northwest 15, Clarence Strait, Stevens Passage, southwest at 15. Prince William Sound, light winds to northwest at 10, and 2-foot seas, light southerlies for the eastern North Gulf Coast, western zone there, northwest at 10, light winds for the Barren Islands, and light southerlies for Cook Inlet at 10 knots with seas run 1 to 2 feet. Kamishak Bay, 15 out of the east. And then those will pick up to 25 knots on Sunday here for Kamishak Bay, as well as southern Cook Inlet, southeast 20 north of the Forelands, east winds coming up to 20 knots for Prince William Sound, south 20 for the North Gulf Coast on the east side, western North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories. From there, down across the Barrens, south-southwest 25 to 30 knots. East side of Kodiak Island, southwesterlies at 30 knots tomorrow, and that extends all the way down to Cape Sarachev. And on the north side of the peninsula, small craft advisory, south winds 25, southerlies at 20 for Bristol Bay, with seas at 5 feet, light winds in Shelikof Strait. But those winds will pick up to 25 knots out of the southwest for the Strait on Sunday. 30-knot winds continue here, east side of Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula, as well as Bristol Bay, southwest 30 knots, so those seas there in the bay building to 9 feet. And for the Fox Islands, south to southwest, 25 to 30 for tomorrow, seas 9 to 13 feet. West-southwest, 25, 7 to 11 foot seas there for the Central Aleutians, Adak and Atka. Out to the west, northwest 15 to 20, and those seas maybe up to 7 feet. Light winds out in the western Aleutians, and actually that 15-knot wind pattern extends all the way into Adak and Atka, so coming down on Sunday. And Unmac Island, 15 to 20 out of the west. Unalaska Island, southwest 20 to 30, with seas up to 11 feet. And for the southwest coast, looking like this, southern Nunivak Island, southerly winds at 20 knots. Same thing for the Pribilofs. Small craft advisories, northern Nunivak Island. Easterlies turn northeast across St. Matthew Island at the same speed, but light winds for both Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. Then on Sunday, 15 knots for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island northeast picking up to 20, seas building to 7 feet. Westerlies, 25 to 30 knots here across the southwest coast with those seas as high as 11 feet. And the Pribilofs, pretty windy, west winds at 30, seas 9 feet, 25 knots small craft advisory winds for St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea for tomorrow, first day of the weekend, north to northeast 10 to 15, turning east at 15. And the west side here, about 20 knots, coming back down to 10 knots from Cape Beaufort all the way to Wales. And then for Sunday, from Wales to Cape Thompson, northeasterlies at 20 knots. We've got east winds at 20 for the western coastline, and the central and east side, mostly easterly at 15, but over toward Demarcation Point, northeast at 10. And for tonight, showers, rain becoming a little less persistent, a little less heavier and more intermittent and more showery in nature here through the interior, but staying cloudy and wet. Stays dry, weak high pressure in over south central Alaska, and so dry variable clouds, showers for the panhandle, rain coming northeastward here, and that will continue to push slowly northward, but across the deltas into Bristol Bay with moderate amounts of rain, less showers in the central interior, and a nice day in store for the southeast coast, at least dry, might be mostly cloudy, but rain doesn't look like it'll get much past Yakutat, but a fair amount of rain here through the central interior with that frontal boundary and a couple of lows. The main low back to the west, trough windy conditions in the southwest.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.